A young woman is suing her former public school because now that she's in college, she's finally acknowledging she can't read and write. We need to talk about this. So, I want to ask you to sincerely ask yourself, and I'm going to sincerely ask myself, what does it say about American education in the public sphere, so public education systems? What does it say about it when a 19-year-old young woman in college is turning around to sue her high school, her former high school, her public high school, because she can't read or write? And I'm not making this up here. She graduated her high school with honors. This young woman's name is Aleysha Ortiz. She graduated with honors. She got a scholarship to go to the University of Connecticut. She aspires to be a writer, but she made it through K through 12 unable to read or write. Let's watch this video.
Even today, could you read this, or would it take you a long time?
It's impossible. I just see his words everywhere.
Aleysha graduated from the Hartford Public School system last year, but she says today she is illiterate. She still doesn't know how to read or write. When she was in early education,
They would just either tell me to sit in a corner and sleep, or just draw pictures, flowers for them.
So, like I mentioned, she's suing the city of Hartford, the Hartford Board of Education. She's 19, and in this case, she's claiming monetary remuneration. She still has that scholarship. It's not been removed from her, as far as I know. But this is how she got through her K through 12. Before anyone says, this is the result of not having enough funding at the public schooling level, which I've seen some people argue, the truth is it's the reverse of it. The public schooling system at Hartford had enough public funding that they were able to constantly, regularly offer her, throughout her entire academic career until she graduated high school, speech-to-text softwares and text-to-speech softwares.
So if you had an assignment where you had to write something, you'd open up a document like this and then do what?
I would go here to use the text-to-speech.
It says dictate.
Dictate, yep. I love pizza.
This is how you would do your assignments.
And then
Cats of the World VAK sporting a twin-prop airplane.
If you had to read something, that's how you do it.
So whenever she needed to read anything, she never read it. She put it through the system, and so the softwares read things to her, and she dictated her answers, and they were written down. Now, before you say, okay, so that sounds like she needs accommodations. Okay, fine, I can acknowledge that. I can acknowledge that different students have different learning needs, and so she falls into that category of special education needs. Here's the problem with this. She is actually unable to identify characters necessary for the formulation of words. So she can converse. As the child of an immigrant, her mother brought her to the United States. Her mother doesn't have a strong command of the English language, and so her mother trusted the public schooling system to educate her child. And whenever she brought up certain concerns to the public schooling system, she was assured that things were being handled well and that Aleysha's education was in good hands. Aleysha graduated with honors. A week before her graduation or so, she finally received the test result, showing that she was dyslexic. Now, even if the diagnosis had been done ahead of time, the point I want to stress here is that we're seeing a massive failure in the public education system. And this is raising that whole debate about the Department of Education. Regardless of where you stand on the defunding of the Department of Education, we do need to acknowledge certain objective truths here. Number one, there's more than 4,000 employees. Many of them earn six-figure income, some as high as $200,000. But since 1980, this department was formed in 1979. Since 1980, K-12 spending and college costs have more than doubled. But since 1979, public education rates, academic success have been at a free fall, not just at the national level, but as a result, with the United States at the global level. The U.S. at one point boasted some of the best educated young people globally, especially in the 60s and 70s. Now, to argue that we were number one is difficult because we measured highest at different metrics. The point, however, is that in recent decades, we have formal metrics that prove we are nowhere near close. Number one, there's been a complete decline. The National Assessment of Education Progress, the NAEP, reported these declines in reading scores amongst Americans as low as 8th grade onwards. And so their test scores are low performing. So much so that people like economist and historian Richard Vader, he reflected on the department's 40-year history, and he suggested, despite significant funding, educational outcomes have not proportionately improved to the taxation fundings that have gone into it. John Taylor Gatto, he's a renowned critic of the education system, he said, we don't need state-certified teachers to make education happen. Certification probably guarantees it won't. He would go on to say, schools and schooling are increasingly irrelevant to the great enterprises of the planet. No one believes anymore that scientists are trained in science classes, or politicians in civic classes, or poets in English classes. The truth is that schools don't really teach anything except how to obey orders. What am I trying to say here? Am I saying that people with special education needs shouldn't be schooled? No, far from it. The United States boasts internationally some of the highest accommodations available for students in its schooling system, private as well as public, and yet it is currently ranking 36th in global literacy with an estimated literacy rate of 79% as of last year. This should cause us reason for concern, because if we want to hit the world in terms of ingenuity and innovation, then what we have to do is to re-look at education. What's the Catholic response? Very simple. In Gaudium et Spes, the Second Vatican Council told us, children and young people should be helped to develop their physical, moral, and intellectual qualities harmoniously, so that they may acquire a sense of responsibility and the right use of freedom. That's what education is for. So much so that when we look at, for example, Gravissimum Educationis, also out of the Second Vatican Council, paragraph 1, true education is directed towards the formation of the human person in view of his final end and the good of that society to which he belongs, in the duties of which he will, as an adult, have a share. Not everyone has the right to go to college. It's a privilege that should be earned, but basic education is meant to prepare us to serve society in different ways. And that's fine. Not everyone has to go to college. That's a good thing. We're meant to realize that we are formed to become virtuous, to become productive, to build up the common good. And if we can understand this, then maybe situations like Aleysha's would never happen again, because we'd actually care about the common good and her need for literacy and thinking critically. So we're not trying to get her to fulfill test scores. We're trying to raise her to be a virtuous individual. That is what academics should be about. And that's why private schools and homeschooling co-ops thrive. Now, I leave that to you for consideration. Education is about excellence, especially in virtue. Thank you for joining us. I'm Marcus Peter.